Everybody, thank you so much for checking in. In this video, we're going to go over SPY, which is the S&P 500 ETF, and we're also going to go over some other notable stocks on the market. Names like QQQ, Tesla, NVDA, Meta, Microsoft, and Google. Meta, Microsoft, and Google will be reporting earnings this week, so we're going to go over some of their earnings projections and what to expect. So let's go ahead and get started by first talking about SPY, and we're going to do so on the daily candles. We always like to start off with the daily candles because it gives us an idea of what the overall day did. So today, when we look back on SPY, which was October 23rd, we can see that SPY attempted a recovery back above this 200-day moving average. This 200-day moving average is a very important level because we have not broken below it since breaking back above it in March. So when we're trading above this level, it acts as a support. And when we trade below it, it acts as a resistance, exactly how the 100-day moving average acted as a resistance here and sent us back down. So throughout this entire year, we've seen SPY breaking below its key moving averages and heading further down. And now it just broke below the most important one, attempted to get back above it. And you can see that traced by this long wick at the top here. But buyers were not strong enough. Sellers stepped in by end of day and moved SPY back below that 200-day moving average. And so going into the rest of the week, you want to have this moving average on your chart and you want to see what relation to it SPY's daily candle opens up and where it closes. In this case, we know that sellers are definitely still in control, but a lot can change this week because of Meta, Microsoft, and Google. So now let's jump into the shorter term levels on SPY, and we're going to take a look here where we can see that SPY has an ability to potentially rally higher. Since it's attempted its rally today, you can see that it pulled back. However, if buyers come in again and they retest these highs, it is a very good chance that they will actually successfully break out because we are looking a little overstretched to the bottom, and it is bound to happen that some buyers will want to come in at this 200-day support. So in this case, if you see SPY rallying back up and it breaks back above 426.75, that is a good place to potentially enter a call or a long position. And then what you can do is you can set a stop loss just below that level, maybe right around 424.75, because when SPY or any other stock moves above that resistance should automatically turn into a support point. And so in this case, if it moves above 426.75 and it holds, then it may continue its rally towards that 430 to 433 mark, which would be your taking profit level. And then if it breaks above 432.80 and you leave a couple runners, then you may be able to take more profits right around that 438.60. Now 438.60 is going to be one of the most critical resistance points, and you can see clearly why here. It's primarily because this is where the strongest rejection came in. SPY spent about 6 days consolidating just below this resistance, only to get rejected at it. So going into the next week, the next 2 weeks, as long as SPY is below that 438.60, at any point sellers can take control again and turn us back down, just as they did today. So now let's move on and talk about QQQ. In this case, we're going to talk about QQQ first on the daily candles. And you can see that QQQ and SPY are forming very similar patterns. And that's because QQQ is the tech index and technology stocks have the most weight in the market. And so whenever tech stocks go down, the rest of the market tends to follow. So here in this case, you see that they're both forming what's known as a bearish head and shoulders, which means that it's making lower highs and lower lows, and QQQ is on the edge of making a new low, just like SPY just did here. You can see that SPY broke below its previous low from the beginning of October, and QQQ is getting very close to breaking that point. Here are some key levels to watch on QQQ. But before we jump into those, actually, let's talk about SPY on this downside. So we talked about the upside. SPY on the downside support is going to be 417.80, and the reason why that's the support on SPY right now is because if we take a look back at what happened today, we see that that was the lowest point it made, and it had that massive reversal off that point. So if you watched our video yesterday or you watched our recent video on SPY, you know that 417, 416 to 418 was about our support area, and now that it gave us that affirming point at 417.80, we know that sellers need a break below this point in order for SPY to sell off further, because if it retests this point after having this massive rally, then buyers are only going to kind of give up hope and SPY is only going to turn back down. So here in this case, if it breaks below 417.80, then puts or a short position is possible with a downside price target of anywhere between 409 to 411. And just keep in mind, if you are swinging anything this week, don't forget that technology stock earnings are going to make or break the market. So speaking of tech stocks, let's jump into QQQ. And here in this case, we're going to see that QQQ, like SPY, has room to the upside. However, it's going to take a lot from the buyers. And what it primarily is going to take is for its ability to break back above Friday's rejection point, which was right around 360.25. You can see that QQQ got rejected 3 times on Friday, right around that range, which means that buyers need to break back above this point to take any kind of control, which is why we have that resistance there. So if QQQ does make that breakout, then calls or a long position are possible, with the next price target being right around 365 to 366. And above that point, it would be right around 370 to 371. Now, these are pretty aggressive price targets, so make sure you check back in, because we are going to do a few more videos updating the price targets and how the volume and overall strength is looking. To the downside, QQQ can move lower towards 347 if it breaks below today's lows, which were right around 351. The next stock on our watch list is going to be Tesla. Now, Tesla, of course, just like the rest of the market, it made that low during the morning. However, it reversed strongly off of it. And we're going to see this kind of trend happening across the market. And the market kind of flattened out for the rest of the day. And there is certainly a lot of uncertainty across the board. And that's just primarily because we don't know what to expect from tech earnings yet. So let's go over Tesla and its levels here. And so we haven't changed our levels on Tesla since yesterday. This is where we had them in our last video. And you can see that Tesla broke below that 210 support and came down to around 202.40, which means we can move this support down towards 202.40. And we know that if Tesla breaks below that level, then Tesla is bound to sell off, the next support being 199. However, if Tesla breaks below 202.40, there's a good chance it'll just continue coming down towards 191 to 192. Tesla is coming off of bad earnings, and stocks that stay or stocks that drop or gap up on earnings tend to stay in that motion. So if Tesla cannot recover very quickly back above that 231.65 mark, there's a very good chance it's going to continue plummeting down, and it will likely take a lot of EV stocks with it. The next stock on our watch list is going to be NVDA, which had a very nice rally today. So NVIDIA outpaced the entire market, and they did so because it looks like they got into some kind of CPU deal to support Windows operating system for Microsoft. So good news takes the stock higher on a day in which nobody expects the market to go up. So if you didn't catch this one, don't beat yourself up, but let's go over some levels that you can watch to maybe catch the next rally on that stock. And so this is the same levels that we had on NVIDIA since our last video, and you can see that the stock actually got rejected right at that 433 resistance that we wanted to see break above. So we didn't change anything about these levels. These are the same levels we had, but you can see that the only thing we need to add here on NVIDIA is that 407.65 support, and that's because that's where NVIDIA reversed for today's reversal. So we're going to go ahead and place support at 407.65. Let's do that here. So if you are placing this on your chart, you want to have a support at 407.65. Perfect. And so in this case, you know that if NVIDIA breaks below this 407.65, then the buyers are likely going to give up, because of course they do not want to see it move below this level. And in that case, NVIDIA is likely to continue coming down towards that 396.50 level. And below that point, it can sharply move lower towards 373 to 374. To the top side, if NVIDIA does continue its rally, it'll need to break above 433. I wouldn't trust the first breakout above that level, only because it is likely going to fake a breakout. So if you are looking to get into NVIDIA above 433, which is the resistance, make sure you start very small, have a stop loss, and give it some breathing room just in case NVIDIA tries to shake you out, and only add to the position after it breaks above 433 a second or a third time. That way you can be safe and you know that buyers are indeed taking control. And at that point, your next price target would be around 447 to 448. and then there is a gap to fill all the way to 460. So above this level, NVIDIA does have a lot more upside room, but just keep in mind that it will take an entire market rally for NVIDIA to stay the course without any downside interruptions. If there is a market sell-off going down, that means NVIDIA is likely to have some sharp moves down before it moves back up. The next stock on our watch list is going to be Meta. Meta is going to be reporting earnings this week, and so if you are watching it, there's no sense in really guessing where the stock is going to go. However, here are some key levels to watch for after its earnings. So if you are looking to play its earnings, so we already had some levels drawn out on Meta from our previous video. The only thing that happened is that Meta tried to break above that 315.85 resistance today, but failed. It got all the way up to around the 317.45. So that means we have to move our resistance up to 317.45. And this bullish range also moves up with it. So if Meta can break back above 317.45 on earnings, then that is a good sign, and it can rally towards 321 and even 326. To the downside, the support is still 306.25, so we need Meta to break below this point for sellers or bears to take control, and below 298, it can sharply move lower towards 286 to 287. Next up is Microsoft. Microsoft, like Meta, is really stuck to the 10, 20, and 50-day moving averages. Not real big upside or downside moves, so it's likely that there will be a big move on earnings. Here are some shorter term levels to watch on Microsoft, with first being the 309 support. So notice on this chart, because we are expecting a big move, we are only focused on the most critical supports. In this case, Microsoft has a support at 309, and if it moves below that point on earnings and stays below that point for the following days, then Microsoft can start making its way down to filling the gap towards 284. Microsoft has an unfilled gap back from April of this year, and so if it has a bad earnings report, then over the next few months we do expect it to start filling this gap towards that 286 or 282 mark. Next up is Google, and Google here in this case also, like Microsoft, has a gap to fill down towards 123.15. And so if Google does poorly on earnings and it moves below 126, we are expecting it to fill the gap back down towards that 123 mark, and that's the gap from their July earnings. To the top side, Google will need to break above 144 in order for it to rally towards 152. So if on earnings it breaks above 144, you can potentially take a call position towards 152. So thank you guys so much for checking in. I hope you found this video helpful, and best of luck.